latest episode of Moon Knight is here and is sure to freak your mind like it is Chris Angel circa 2005. There are so many Easter eggs littered throughout, with a lot of love given to the Moon Knight comics, very specifically the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood run. There is a lot to cover, so please be patient because we will talk about that ending, so let's dive right in. I'm Monty with the Montyverse, and I'm here to guide you through Moon Knight Episode 4, The Tomb. The episode begins with the camera upside down as it spins itself right side up. This is a common trope used to symbolize a new world order, or someone's life about to be turned upside down. We have seen it used in Black Panther when Killmonger enters the throne room, and most recently in Moon Knight Episode 2, when Stephen with the V is about to enter the museum the morning after the Jackal fight. Both times indicated a life-altering moment in the lives of the protagonist. It is safe to say that the spin here does the same. The character we see in silhouette is the avatar of Osiris, who we met last episode. He places Khonshu's Ushabti gently inside a wall cubby as we pan out to see a wall full of other imprisoned gods that looks like someone's hot toy collection, showing that there are many other gods that have fallen to the Ennead, and perhaps there was some sort of major conflict amongst the gods at one point, which ended with victory for one side, which dictated the new rules of engagement for humanity. Something I have been asked by friends is, how can the moon still be around if Khonshu, the god of the moon, is in prison? This is a good question, and one I believe I can address. The Egyptian gods are essentially alien beings that hail from the pocket dimension known as the Overvoid, which is essentially the same as the Asgardians in the MCU. Thor can control thunder and the storms, but they existed on Earth before him, and after he's gone. When he would visit the people of Earth, specifically the Vikings, they saw his power and viewed him as a deity. This is the same concept here, but with these gods and the ancient Egyptians. Therefore, Khonshu may have abilities that tie into the moon, the stars, and the night, but he is not directly responsible for creating them, with the perception at the time from humans being that he is a god of the moon. The opening music is tense and serious to reflect the tone of the episode, which is a far departure from the pop music and fanfare we have gotten from the previous 3 episodes. Layla is seen attempting to wake up Stephen, who is still knocked out from the strain of moving the sky as one does. They are pursued by Harrow's men, who we see were watching them in the desert at the end of episode 3. They shoot at the vehicle, and we see they leave behind 3 bullet holes. In the end credits, we see the shattered glass represents Mark's broken psyche. So I wonder if the 3 bullets here indicate the 3 personalities inside of Mark, with them all being on the side of the vehicle that Stephen rides in later. Layla takes down Harrow's men, proving again how capable she is, as she protects Stephen and prevents his capture in the process. She reminds me a lot of Evie from the Mummy films, in the sense that she is smart, capable, and determined to keep up in terms of action. Oh, hi, Stephen. Layla and Vivian with a V for Stephen do some light bonding as they head towards Ammet's tomb, stopping the truck at a narrow valley passageway. In ancient times, to prevent robbers from raiding the tombs of pharaohs, they designed the tombs to have hidden pathways and entrances to confuse would-be thieves, which is why pharaohs went from being laid to rest in pyramids to being entombed in the Valley of the Kings and other such places. Layla and Stephen walk through the valley, where we get an unexpected cameo from Kevin Feige.
Oh, yes.
At Harrow's dig site, Mark confronts Steve about his crush on Layla, but before that, we get an interesting exchange where Stephen implies that he may be able to access Mark's physical skills through muscle memory, which does make sense as we have seen him driving in episode 1, even when he claims to not have a license. The site appears empty, with Harrow and his people going inside already, but just out of Layla's vision, we see a bloody mummification tool. This hook was used to remove organs and brains during the mummification process, a process which Stephen describes in detail in episode 1. Layla and Stevie do a little light flirting, and Stephen explains to Layla why Mark has been keeping his distance from her before it got awkward, only for it to then get immediately awkward. Is this cheating? What is the ruling on this? Because I have no idea and I'm very confused. Layla just seems very emotionally vulnerable, and Stephen is her husband, also not her husband, and Stephen kisses so awkward, and yeah, let's get back to the episode. Immediately after this, Mark takes back semi-control and punches Stephen directly in the face. We see statues of Sphinx, which were common in tombs due to them being viewed as spiritual guardians, and Stephen says,
So if they just sprang to life right now and asked me a riddle for passage, I'd be thrilled. I'd shit myself, but I'd be thrilled.
Which is a reference, of course, to the riddle of the Sphinx. Layla writes something in the sand in what I believe is Arabic to honor her father, both letters being the isolated version of the characters, so I believe these are her father's initials, but I'm far from an expert, so if you can, let me know down in the comments if I'm right. They find bullet casings in the tomb and wonder what Harrow's men were shooting at. These are no doubt the mummies we see later, as it is possible Harrow knew exactly what would happen when they entered the tomb and is serving his people up to them as kind of chess pieces to help him to progress throughout this tomb. Stephen figures out the maze of the tomb is based on the Eye of Horus, with the eye having 6 points representing 6 senses and the maze having 6 different paths to choose from. The Eye of Horus is a wildly popular symbol in ancient Egyptian culture that represents well-being, healing, and protection, with some believing it had magical powers. It derives from the mythical conflict between the god Horus and his rival god Set, in which Set tore out or destroyed one or both of Horus's eyes, and one of the eyes was subsequently healed or returned to Horus with the assistance of another deity, most of the time Thoth. Horus subsequently offered the eye to his deceased father Osiris, and its reviving power sustained Osiris in the afterlife. As I stated before, the 6 points on the eye represent 6 different senses and state of being, and they decipher that since Ammet's avatar is the mouth of the god, they would follow the path of the long loop line, which represents taste. They follow said path to a mummification room with a drawing that depicts 6 Hexahaka priests, Layla stating their masks and ceremonial staffs are indicating they were entombed with the pharaoh. Haka are essentially sorcerers, with the word Heka representing magic in ancient Egyptian culture. Layla and Stephen find blood in chunks on the ceremonial table in the room, followed by canopic jars. These jars were used by ancient Egyptians during the mummification process to store and preserve the viscera, or organs, for the afterlife. There are 4 types of jars, each represented by a different animal head, that are used to hold a specific organ. Baboon-headed jars carries the lungs, jackal-headed jars carries the stomachs, human-headed jars contain the livers, and falcon-headed jars contain the intestines. All this indicates that some fresh organ cleanings have been going on here. Stephen discovers ancient text on the wall that confirms that Ammet is trapped in an Ushabti, like Khonshu was. He also discovered freshly made dye, a fresh canopic jar, and a body wrapped with snakeskin. The ancient Egyptians believed that the regenerative properties of snakes would heal them in the afterlife. Stephen finds an exit, but they hear gunfire before Layla can climb up and they can both escape together. We see one of the Haka place one of Harrow's men on the table, where he proceeds to brutally kill him and remove his organs. The mummies seem to track people through sound, as they don't appear to see, and instead click with their mouth as a form of echolocation, like bats, which is kind of weird because isn't it true in ancient Egyptian culture all of the pharaoh servants have their tongues removed? So maybe that's just the stub of a tongue clicking in their mouths? Or, magic. Layla and Stephen are forced to split up, and Stephen takes out the first mummy by squishing it. This image of the mummy's hand reaching out is ripped right from the pages of the Jeff Lemire comic. This scene with Layla gives me heavy The Descent vibes, which is a movie that uses darkness and immense unexplored caverns to produce scares as the women of the film attempt to escape blind creatures. Sound familiar? I really love the levels of intensity this scene has, as we are treated to some truly scary moments, and we don't feel safe even after everything is over. Stephen discovers a sarcophagus room of the pharaoh, and he states that by the look of it, it must be one of the big ones. If you do your research, you will discover that this is possible, as there are many tombs of ancient pharaohs that have yet to be discovered. Stephen sees Macedonian writing and realizes this tomb belongs to the only pharaoh who ruled over Macedonia and Egypt, Alexander the Great. We see statues of a golden horse, which may be a tribute to Bucephalus, who was Alexander's horse and one of the most famous horses of all ancient time. We also see Ushabti-like figures of soldiers, which may have been placed there to serve as an army to Alexander in the afterlife. Just when we thought Layla was in the clear, we see Arthur Harrow creeping.
You gotta creep. Creep.
Come on.
Layla walks away from him, but he recites her nickname, Little Scarab, which we learned the last episode is what her father calls her. Harrow reveals that her father's name was Abdallah el-Fayuli, which is interesting because there is a comic book character named Abdul Fayul, who was a highly respected archaeologist, as well as the hero, the Scarlet Scarab. I'm not saying that Layla's father was in fact a superhero, but his name tied into the fact that he calls Layla his little scarab. He also wore a scarf with scarab detailing that Layla made for him, and it is possible that he may have been based on the character. Later on in the episode, we do see that Layla has drawn a red scarab on her thimble, and her middle name is Abdallah. In the comics, Fayul passes the power and mantle of the Scarlet Scarab to his son, so it is plausible that Layla could become the Scarlet Scarab at some point. In the Jeff Lemire Moon Knight run, there are parts where in Stephen's mind, Marlene, the character that Layla is based off of, is an actress in his movie, and she's playing the villainous Stained Glass Scarlet, which once again connects her to the color Harrow tells Layla that when he judged Marc, he saw that he was in more pain than any one man could bear. This makes sense as Marc created these personalities to help deal with the pain that he's experiencing, to help him deal with his suffering. The pain of keeping the truth from Layla could also have been so great that it caused Marc to be unable to control the Steven persona. I mean, he did say in episode 2 that he had the persona under control, but that all changed recently. This could have been the event that spurred all of that. Steven realizes the Ushabti is hidden in Alexander's throat because he's the voice of Ammet, and he gets all up in there, discovering the statue. Just then, Layla walks in and demands answers from Marc. Marc is able to take full control of the body back and essentially confirms his comic book origin. He was working a mercenary job and one of his partners got greedy and executed Layla's father as well as all the other archaeologists. And when Marc tried to stop him, he shot Marc and left him for dead. This partner is most likely Raoul Bushman, the person who in the comics does the same exact thing and later becomes a long-term villain of Moon Knight. I would love to see Bushman used if there is a season 2 because they laid such a nice foundation for the character throughout this season. He has a very personal connection to both Marc and Layla now, which can be used to progress their characters forward in a season 2. Marc says that he should have died, and that is the night he most likely ended up in Khonshu's tomb and was brought back to serve him. In one of the trailers, we have this clip of Marc and Khonshu in front of what appears to be Khonshu's tomb, so it is possible we will be getting a flashback to this moment in later episodes. Harrow and his men are approaching, and Marc sends Layla away and attempts to buy her time. He reaches for an axe which is almost identical to one of Moon Knight's weapons from the comics. He goes all Michael Keaton Batman on Harrow and eventually attempts to fight back.
Lights out! Now you want to get nuts? Come on! Let's get nuts.
Putting up a hell of an effort. He's shot twice by Arthur Harrow, landing in a pool of water and slowly closing his eyes. We see Marc's body flow into the air, going higher and higher into the darkness until a light appears and he fades into it. Now, I know we are going to have a lot of questions about the next part of the episode, and I will be releasing a video tomorrow or Friday diving heavily into my theories of what all this means. So bear with me as we process the Easter eggs first, and we do some light theory work after. We transition to what appears to be an homage to cheap action shows of the 90s, like Hercules and Young Indiana Jones. It is a movie called Tomb Buster, starring Stephen Grant. The Stephen Grant persona in the comics was at one point an actor starring in a Moon Knight TV series, and in the Jeff Lemire run, he is a producer and later director of a Moon Knight movie that he's making for Marvel Studios. The video also features references to the show so far, as we have the golden compass instead of the golden scarab, and the plot heavily revolves around a lunar god. The statue of the Aztec lunar god being split into 3 different faces like Marc's is here. The logo of the movie itself is even an homage to Indiana Jones, while the title is a reference to Tomb Raider. Full disclosure, I completely geeked out at this next scene because we pan out of the TV to reveal that we are in a mental health facility or a sane asylum, whichever term works more here, which is something ripped directly from the Jeff Lemire comic as Marc wakes up in an asylum after experiencing death-like symptoms where he is told his whole history as Moon Knight was all in his head and that he has been committed since the age of 12. I won't spoil too much because it truly is a fantastic read and a must-read for anyone looking to get into the character of Moon Knight. You should really check this out for yourself. It is an amazing story. We see the asylum filled with references to the show so far. We have Crowley reading bingo numbers, now heavily resembling his comic book counterpart. We have a Rubik's Cube, colored bowls representing the die from the tomb. We see Donna present, clutching a blue scarab, which was from the museum gift shop as we saw in episode 1. The cupcake cart represents the cupcake car. A woman is seen drawing a bird with what appears to be the head of Khonshu as we know him in the show. The pictures on the whiteboard are the same locations as the postcards in Steven's apartment. And as we land on Marc, we see a goldfish that looks like Gus, except this can't be Gus because Gus is dead because no one fed him. R.I.P. Gus. Layla is also there, and we see her chomping on a marshmallow, just like we did last episode. Marc is tied to the wheelchair the same way Steven was secured to his bed in episode 1 and 2. When he falls, he drops a Moon Knight action figure that is very clearly handmade, and you know what? Props to Steven on that paint job and custom cape. He's quite the customization expert. He meets with his therapist who is Arthur Harrow. In the comics, Marc's therapist is Dr. Ammet, who is actually Ammet in disguise. And as Harrow is an avatar of Ammet in this series, it makes sense that he's the one who's here. His two followers, Billy and Bobby, are also here, and they are orderlies, just like they were in the comic where they served Ammet, and they were actually jackals. We see that Arthur still walks with a cane and wears the same sandals. His office is filled with references. There is a picture of the German Alps from episode 1. There are 4 canopic jars. There's a statue of Sobek, a glass pyramid, and even a giant statue of the head of Ammet. All of these things help to wake Mark up as he appears to remember everything finally. Mark flees into the facility where he finds a sarcophagus moving. He opens it and discovers Steven, and they both hug. Now, let's just take a moment here to appreciate one thing, and that's that Oscar Isaac is a pretty great hugger. But why are Steven and Mark in their own bodies? And we still don't exactly know what's going on here. They pass by a second sarcophagus that is red in color and shaking violently. This is most likely the Jack Lockley persona, who Mark and Steven have no idea exists. In the comics, while he's not as murderous as he is in the series, he is still the most violent and rough around the edges of the 3 personas. Now, we know there has to be a third person there because someone had to ask out the tour guide from episode 1, and someone had to kill these people. So, who's doing all this stuff? It's gotta be Jack Lockley. The pair make it to the end of the hallway where this happens. Tarouet is the protective ancient Egyptian goddess of childbirth and fertility, and is usually depicted as a bipedal hippopotamus. We also saw a plushie of her when Steven was doing inventory in episode 1. Now I know what you're thinking. What exactly is going on here? Is Mark dead, or is he just crazy? What happened and what didn't happen? What's real and what's not real? And did anyone feed the damn goldfish? No, no one fed the goldfish, and unfortunately he's dead. R.I.P. Gus. Personally, I do believe that Mark is dead. And that when we saw his body float, that it was being taken to the Overvoid, which is the place where the Egyptian gods are from and where they stay trapped according to Khonshu in the comics. I believe that he is separated from his other personas so that his soul may be judged more cleanly than it was in episode 1. Mark's parents are cast in this series according to the cast list, and we know that there were scenes from the trailer that are showing us events that already happened through different perspectives. I believe that episode 5 will dive heavily into Mark's history, showing us the origin of his dissociative identity disorder and when the Stephen Grant persona first appeared. I believe we will see his deal with Khonshu, potentially his life as a mercenary, as well as other moments from throughout his life and the struggles that he faced. How the gods factor into this is yet to be seen, but I do believe that Tarouet is going to play a role because she is the god of birth, and I believe Mark is going to be reborn after coming to terms with his past and accepting his alternate personas. But that is all you get for today, as I will be going into more detail on that theory as well as a lot of other potential theories in my video that I will be dropping either tomorrow or Friday. So, make sure you have the notification bell on to be notified as soon as that video drops. But guys, that's it. That's Moon Knight episode 4. Let me know down below what you thought about the episode, and also, if you caught anything I missed, drop it in the comments as well, and I'll pin your comment. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest videos. And until next time, guys, catch you later.